the legendary Count Dracula had an equally legendary prototype. His brutality was astonishing to those around him. And, as scientists have recently discovered, he suffered from a very rare disease that gave him a particularly sinister appearance. Vlad Tepes is a historical character, and he can be called a hero of his country. Tepes means spiker in Romanian, a word the Romanians borrowed from the Turks. He bravely fought the Turks and executed them in an uncomplicated and cruel way, which inspired his tribesmen to give him this nickname, honorable in their narrow circles. However, he went down in history for very different reasons. Vlad became the prototype of the famous Count Dracula. And the reason was not only his bloodthirstiness in battle, but also a strange disease. And recently scientists have been able to establish what Tepes suffered from. Vlad Tepes lived in the 15th century. He was the head of one of the principalities, which was located on the territory of modern Romania. In the Middle Ages, this territory was controlled by the Kingdom of Hungary. Researchers from the Politecnico di Milano, together with colleagues from the National Archives of Romania, have analyzed documents written by Tepes. But the main thing was not in the information from the letter, but in the chemistry, the substances that from the author's skin got on the letter. Scientists carried out chemical and then genetic analyses of this material. Genetic analysis showed that Dracula had a rare disease, ciliopathy. This is a disorder of cellular cilia, which in adulthood leads to a variety of symptoms. Lungs, kidneys, nervous system suffer. It often leads to facial defects. Count Dracula's second disease is even rarer, hemolacria. It's much less scary, but aesthetically unpleasant. In this case, blood mixes with tears in the tear ducts, and the person literally cries blood. And the blood is released even in the usual tear mode. It is not necessary to sob. This makes the patient's eyes look ominously red. In addition to genetic problems, geographical problems were added. Transylvania in the 15th century is hardly the worst region in Europe. There were constant battles between the Hungarians, Austrians and the Ottoman Empire. As a young man, Vlad lived in Turkish captivity for several years. It was here that he became hardened by the mistreatment. And when he returned, sad news was waiting for him. At home there was a coup d'état, his father and brothers were killed. And it was done by the local nobility, which Vlad's family fully trusted. Vlad dealt with them very cruelly. He gathered them for a feast and destroyed them right at the meal. And he freed the peasants who belonged to them from feudal dependence. Further, over the years, Dracula became known as a brutal exterminator of Turks. His army slaughtered at least 10,000 Turks, and several hundred were put to the stake. He used scorched earth tactics, burned houses and crops in his territory to keep them out of the hands of the Turks. Very cruel to its citizens, but it made it harder for the Turks to take Transylvania. Then he cleaned house, eliminating the criminal element in the traditional way for his nickname. No one would risk stealing under Dracula. The story goes that Vlad Tepes installed 3 golden bowls in the main square, from which all comers could drink water. So, the order in the region was such that as long as Dracula was alive, the bowls remained intact. He died fighting the Turks in 1476. Dracula was 48 years old at the time. A very respectable age for such a risky knight with a bouquet of genetic diseases.